Welcome to the Scottish Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host Chris, and here we'll be delving into a multitude of strange occurrences that happen within Scotland and beyond. You can contact us with your accounts at the Scottish Paranormal Podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean and YouTube, and you can contact us by either means. Tonight's episode we're speaking to Paul Sinclair from Truth Proof. Paul's an investigator and researcher of unexplained phenomena within the East and North Yorkshire area and beyond. He's a successful author of numerous books on the subject, a talented artist. He created the ILF UFO sightings website back in 2002. He can also be found now on truthproof.uk, Facebook via Truth Proof and YouTube via Truth Proof, where you will find live shows, numerous videos, numerous interviews and numerous accounts on the subject. I'd just like to thank Paul again for coming on the Scottish Paranormal Podcast, and I'd like to welcome to the show. Hi Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good to be here. And seems to be something I say quite often, but not to yourself. But yeah, all good, and look forward to just sharing a few views with your listeners.
Yeah, brilliant. How's life in Yorkshire?
It's okay. I think we're all sort of, I wouldn't say struggling, but everybody's sort of adjusting to this, as they say, pardon the phrase, the new normal. And it is a bit weird, isn't it? It's not stopped me as regards research, and I don't mean it in a blasé way, or I've been out here, there and everywhere during lockdown, because I haven't, but the places I go are so remote, I'm not going to encounter people. Do you know what I mean? Most of the time. Totally. I'm not on cliff tops at the moment, or very rare. I went in week, but it's a bird breeding season at the moment, and there's a lot of avid bird spotters up there, and they've seen an albatross. So it's absolutely, Paul. You know, I think there's more chance of seeing a UFO than seeing this albatross. No disrespect to bird spotters, but
it's fully twitchers then.
It is, yeah. Is there a term for us? I don't know what they call it. I think they just call us geeks.
I think there's plenty of terms for us, but so what I was wanting to do, as I discussed a wee bit with you earlier, there's quite a lot of new people with the subject, especially what's happened recently in America and stuff as well, and it's kind of maybe brought a lot of people into the subject who maybe had a story and didn't really feel comfortable sharing it in the past, and maybe now it's getting a wee bit more acceptable, and they're maybe starting to look at what's out there and what basically what stories are out there and what information's out there. So I want to kind of come back to brass tacks with yourself. I know you've probably covered a lot of the stories before, but to a lot of people, there's quite a lot of new material there that you've got, although you've probably told it yourself through podcasts and your videos and stuff. But on that, I think there are a lot of new people at the subject. I think they deserve to actually see what you've got in there and what's on their doorstep.
Well, you know, there's loads and loads of new material. I mean, I'm writing this new book, and I don't think I've spoke about half the stories that's in it. And I don't want to make people think I'm losing my mind, but some of the stuff you can't even remember because there's that much information keeps coming to me, do you know? But I spoke on a few 2 to 3 hour radio shows, the ones in America, and one of them I've done 3 times now, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and not spoke about same thing 3 times, because I feel a bit guilty when you're sharing information and you go on a podcast and then you're sharing same information. But I really need to sort of give myself a bit of you just hold on there, because there's people making, I don't mean a living out of this, because I've not made any money out of it, but they're getting by telling 1 story or 2 stories forever.
Yeah.
Rendlesham Forest. There's nothing to take away the brilliance of the Rendlesham story, but come on, researchers, dig a little bit deeper. Let's pack some information around Rendlesham, and let's find out what were happening. There's got to be stuff that were happening around that time. I know there's been loads of researchers kind of dug into it over the years, and somebody might be screaming at the screen now saying, well, why don't you do it? I've got enough to do without getting involved in that, you know. I don't know where that little bit came from, really, Chris, but it's just that, you know, I think a lot of people, particularly researchers, they should be looking for new information all the time, and not just concentrating on old cases that have been done and redone. And it just seems easy, that to me. It's easy to grab somebody else's work and let's just word this a little bit different, and I'll just throw another angle on it, and then I can say I've looked into this. And to me, it's laziness, you know.
It's amazing what you find out there as well, when you start looking, and you'll know yourself over the amount of years you've been doing it, and when people get that trust in you and know that what you're looking for in terms of that, it's the stories come out the woodwork, and they're there. And I know you probably have stories that you need to sit on it, you can't talk about, and for people, through the auspice that people don't want them shared, or through the auspice you need to hold on to them for certain time periods or whatever else. And I know that'll go on as well, but there's so much information out there, and so much stuff that people's got themselves.
But there's a brilliant story, and obviously I've just been talking about ones that have been done, and this is one I've wrote about that's been done by other people. However, I found new information. I brought new stuff to the table, and that were XS894, the lightning that crashed in 1970. Do you know? And I think Tony Dodd looked into it. I think it was brought by a journalist for, I don't know, Grimsby Evening Gazette or something. I might have got paper wrong. And I don't know if you're familiar with this case, but it's a lightning aircraft that crashed on September 8th, 1970, allegedly pursuing a UFO over the North Sea.
Yeah.
And it had been done and done and done. And Tony Dodd did a great job on it. The sort of ex-police detective is now passed away, and he wrote about it in his book, Alien Investigator. And I spoke to Tony. I said, look, I found more information out about this. Do you want to sort of get involved in it again? And he was frightened too, because he said he'd had death threats. Whether he had or not, I don't know. And I've had, not death threats, that'd be a silly thing to, well, not silly, but I haven't had death threats. I've been told to stop looking into events over the North Sea when I was looking into some tornado crashes, but not for XS894. But I found out days before the lightning crashed that a RAF Marine craft coming out of Bridlington, not far from where this aircraft crashed, had to be beached on North Beach because it got a 12-inch by 25-foot hole ripped in its hull by an unknown object. You know, that none of the researchers found that out. I don't want to hold my hand up and say, oh, look how good I am. But that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to look into an old case, find something new. And we know that that's not forced to be UFO related. But when you've got an unusual case, and it is unusual, highly unusual, an aircraft's crashed over at North Sea. They don't crash all the time. And then a few days before, we've got this marine craft that's holed with a 25-foot by 12-inch hole in its hull. Then a few days after, there's a speedboat that the wife's watching from the shore, and it's the husband's in it, his children, and apparently it's not going fast. It's struck by an unknown object and disintegrates. They're all clinging to wreckage. So you've got three things that happen there within days of each other. Now to me that becomes interesting. And I'm sorry, people, if you can hear me dog barking, I can't stop it. I'd like to, but we're going to have to just put up with that. So that kind of becomes interesting, you know. And then the former butcher of Flamborough, because it crashed off Flamborough Head, which is about 4 miles from where I'm sat. He tells me that as a schoolboy in early September 1970, he went to look at landing traces of an alleged flying saucer that landed on the cliff tops. And the farmer, I think the principal farmer, is still alive but not unable to talk, but his family members are, and I've still not got to speak to them. I've no reason to believe that the former butcher, who's called Dean Bolton, I don't mind using his name because Dean had allowed me to use his name. I want to speak to family members because I'm told that the MOD came and instructed that it plough the field out and all traces of it. So once again, it becomes interesting. It revives XS894 because there's a lot of people said it weren't UFO related. Now, I'm not in a position to say, hey, yes, it was, but there's a lot of indicators to say that highly unusual events, let's put it that way, were taking place when that aircraft crashed. Incidentally, I don't know the exact dates. Someone tells me it was 16th of September. The program UFO. Can you remember the program that used to be on the television?
Yeah.
That started. So this guy can date it because of that program. And there were a guy in his garden with his mum in Bridlington, and his surname's Cooper. And I've spoke to him at length. We're quite good friends now. He's been to this property, and they watched, I think he said, 5 pewter-shaped flying saucers slowly moving out over the rooftops towards Bempton. Mum even got binoculars on them. And inside the sphere, there was another circle that looked like molten embers, and that's how they described it. Now, that were documented by some ufologists at the time. That sighting came too. So we've got quite a lot of information revolving around, you know, the crash of the lightning that suggests it could be UFO related. I don't know where you want to go with hotels, Chris.
What was kind of thinking? So pulling it back, obviously, to where I know you started the ILF website and site back in 2002.
Yeah.
What was it? If you can maybe describe for the audience as well, for some of the audience who don't know your work, most of the people in the UFO or paranormal community within the UK and elsewhere in the US as well will know some of your work already. People new to the subject might know. So it's a case of give them a kind of just overview why you kind of started, what made you start that then, and then overview the kind of area. We'll go through the subject. We'll touch on obviously the stories and stuff, and we'll go through. But just a kind of overview of the area that you've kind of found in some of these reports and stuff.
Yeah, a good question, because I tend to just go into details, and before I know it, I've lost 15-20 minutes under. And you're right. I started ILF UFO website, Intelligent Light Forms. That's what the ILF stood for. Back then in 2002, because I'd always had an interest in the subject. You know, from childhood, a few strange things had happened to me, which I've documented in that book, Night People. And then, as I've said before, life gets in the way. You know, I've got 4 girls, wife, trying to make a living, trying to build some kind of future for us. And it never goes away. You know, the interest in the UFOs, the interest in the paranormal never goes away. The strange happenings that were occurring around myself and my family didn't stop. You don't press a button and think, well, we'll stop this and we'll restart it when you've got loads of time, Paul. It's still there, but you know, life has to go on, kind of thing. So 2002, myself and this guy called Chris Shorty were driving home from York. We'd been working, I don't know, anyway, regardless, we'd been working on some housing. Lovely sunny day. Gets to Sledmere, which is a principal place where a lot of the activity were taking place on the East Yorkshire wolds. And we see this huge tube-shaped object over some trees. Because I'm straight on it, we pull the van up, we're looking at this thing, we could feel it. We couldn't hear it, you could kind of feel it. And it were in a field, over in the fields and the trees, and it were over the trees. And I'm sort of saying to Shorty, you know, you can see this, can't you? Do not say you've not seen it tomorrow and all that. And we're discussing it. Interesting thing, really, because he saw it and he were adamant he'd seen it. The next day he were adamant, and then it dissipated, and now he won't talk about it. You know, it's strange. That's the way it affects some people, but this thing just vanished. But after that, I thought, right, I'm gonna have a go at doing this website. And one of my daughters, she'd got some friends who could build websites, and you know, sort of, I don't know, 6th form or uni, and they had to go, because I'm pretty useless with that kind of thing. And we did this ILF UFO website, and pretty crude, but as I just gathered these reports and started putting them on, I think some of it is still archived. So if you typed in ILF UFO, you'll see reports from primarily, I think it was most active probably in between 2006 and 2009. You know, 2009 was such a mammoth year for UFO reports around East and North Yorkshire, maybe even UK. That's why I think I surprised some people when they say, oh, have you heard about this case? And it could be a famous case. I hadn't a clue what they're on about. And because I don't look at other people's work, not because it's not valid, simply because I've just got that much to do of my own. I'm not really that interested. And well, I'm just not. So yeah, go on.
You've got enough to look at where you are. So
yeah.
So You started that in 2002, which was great in that sense, for the fact that the internet was still in its kind of infancy there as well, for websites and even website building, all that kind of stuff. So how off you for doing that. But like going on for that, so within the area, what kind of size of area were a lot of these reports that you're finding coming in from? I know obviously it was like Yorkshire based, but I know obviously where you were based as well, there was quite a, it wasn't a large area where a lot of these things were happening, was it?
It isn't. If you say I'm in Bridlington now in East Yorkshire, and you know, you'd go to Bempton, Flamborough, Speeton, these areas, they're only 3, 4, 5 miles away, and I can equally go inland another 8 to 15 miles inland onto the Wolds, which is, in ancient times, it had been called the Wilds. It's all barren woodland and sort of barren sort of moorland and rough grazing for sheep. Yeah. And that's where a lot of this stuff were happening. And, you know, the light form phenomena, these spheres of light that I've sort of banged on about for years, that just sort of, one will just open up in the sky and then it suddenly become two and disappear, and then it's over there. You know, I believe that when we were observing them on Wolds, they were probably happening out at sea. It were only that I sort of got working on building sites, trawlerman stopped working at sea and come onto the sites, and I got quite good friends with him. Yeah. And then I started finding out that there's a lot of stuff being seen out at sea. I mean, I knew about the reports as well, but I was avidly looking out onto these sort of barren farmlands and up into North Yorkshire as well. There's a lot of stuff being seen. It's not unique to me. This stuff's been seen for decades and decades. And if you type in looking for old UFO reports on internet, and you'll find loads for around North Yorkshire and East Yorkshire, long before I started looking into it. I think what we've got though is, in myself, is somebody who's willing to not just look at the UFOs. Let's look at the cryptids. Let's look at the big cats, because it's all occurring within the same area. Yeah. And you usually find that, and I don't mean the cats are connected to the UFO, but there's got to be some link somewhere. And we bang on about the location being the key. That probably is. And these locations, these thin areas, these areas of high strangeness. And I think we're kind of in one. And as I spoke to somebody a few days ago, and it's like when you throw a rock into a pool, and you're in the epicenter, and that's where the activity is, but it just permeates out, and people are getting touched by all sorts of phenomena that they wouldn't necessarily link to the UFO phenomena. You know, the ghost phenomena, poltergeist phenomena, could all be activated within these areas. And I'm saying that loosely because I haven't got the answers to any of this, people. And anybody that has, well, I don't want to hear from you, but I'm sure you'll be talking on radio shows, and you'll be sort of blowing us all away with your knowledge if you've got the answers to this, you know.
Yeah. So going back to some of the light forms and that like yourself seen or people seen, what kind of distances were they seeing, and what kind of shapes were they seeing, and colours and things like that? What was the kind of average or normal kind of thing they were?
Well, good point. I mean,
actually, if it was normal, but you know,
if we're looking at the light, and then it's strange that a lot of it is light phenomena. A lot of the UFOs, people term as UFOs, it's light phenomena. Now, let's just jump from East Yorkshire and let's go to Devon. And there's a guy there seeing the orange spheres of light, but got binoculars on them. And he tells me he sees bronze-coloured pyramids inside them. So, I mean, is that across the board? Is that what's actually inside these spheres of light? I don't know. But the actual size and shape of the lights, primarily up on the cliff tops, there's sort of amber colour. Well, I've seen red ones, we've seen white ones, and blue, but usually amber. Been onto the cliff tops, we're a police officer friend who comes up quite often. We'll spend a full night up there. And above the RAF base, just one particular night, we're walking down to 5 minutes into the journey, and there's a flash of light above the base. Now, I'm not talking just above it. I'm talking way up in the sky, but it's pretty cloudy, and it's sort of oblong. And we both look at it and probably swear a few things, words, and I think he says, "Do it again," but nothing happened. Nothing. No crack of thunder. No lightning out at sea. Just that. Hours and hours later, because we're anticipating some really interesting is going to happen tonight. Nothing happened. Do you know what I mean? So, and the squares of light are quite interesting. I mean, I've seen squares of light with Steve Ashbridge. I've seen them with Andy Ramsden. With the noises, the strange noises up there as well, on the cliff tops. And you remember, you're next to the North Sea. You're within, some instances you're within 10 foot of it. You know, if you wanted to go over the cliff, in others you're 30 foot, depending on where the fence line is running. Yeah. So you're trying to comprehend what could be under there, because it's not rocks falling. It feels like really heavy machinery, although I don't think it is. I'm not trying to say there's a base under there. Yeah. I used to work at Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. Now, I don't know if anybody's been in a place, some of them warehouses and them big housings when they're empty. But if you're in them when they're empty and you've got forklifts moving heavy materials about, they drop them, there's a big reverberation, you know, liken it to bison beams dropping onto a floor, you know, the big concrete beams. And it's like that. And you think, yeah, oh, it could be something moving underground. Obviously, it could be something geological, but you'd think if you were hearing that, then you'd see the evidence of it above ground eventually. You know, if something's collapsed below, but you're not seeing it. And we've heard this at more than one occasion. I've had people phoning me and saying, you know, I were up there last night, and not people I know, you know, they've emailed me and then, can I speak to you? And this is on more than one occasion. And yeah, I were up there last night. We left about 1:30. Did you see anything? No, but we heard some really strange, heavy rumblings underground. Bearing in mind, you've got the sea just in front of you. And then you've got these...
Sorry to interrupt. What kind of size are the cliffs? They're quite high up, aren't they?
Yeah. They're sort of going from, if you're at speed, and they'll just go on a steady gradient up to sort of from nothing to 45 degrees to absolutely vertical at 420 feet. Yes, they're quite high. At Flamborough, we've got like, I don't know, 60, 70 feet, and they just slowly climb 200, 300 feet, probably just behind the RAF base, 280. I'm not exactly certain. And if you look out to sea from, I don't know, 200, between 200 and 300 feet, you've got a visual of about 18 to 22 miles, depending on your height. You know, and these objects that we're looking at out at sea, and bear in mind, I haven't seen them for months, but there's a guy who works out on the boats. He's not on the fishing boat, actually. He's on a pleasure cruiser. Told me that he saw them last week, and he saw 2. He got in touch. So there's things still being seen. It's just, what is it, Chris? I mean, unexplained phenomena does not present to order, so I could probably stand there for the next 6 months, nothing will happen. Somebody will come up an half an hour after me, and they might see something. You know, you've got all these bird spotters up there, and with good telephoto lenses and really good equipment. Granted, they're there in daytime, but why aren't we seeing this stuff in daytime? You know, and I do know that things do get seen by the bird spotters. And I mean, we've got an absolutely incredible example of a photograph from, I think it was October last year, from a guy, a professional photographer called Brian Lancaster, who went to North Landing during the night to take some, what really is it, long exposure pictures, where time-lapse type pictures, where it probably takes 30 to 40 seconds to gather as much light and then take the picture. And we've got it on ILF, it's not ILF, sorry, we've got it on the truthproof.uk website, this picture. They were kind enough to send me the picture when I found out about it, and spoke to him, and he says, you can do what you want with it, which I'm very grateful for, because as he's taking this picture, can't remember exact time in, but I think it were about a 35-second picture. I think about 8 seconds in, a single orange light appears in the sky. And who he's with says, what's that? And he says, I don't know. And then another one appears. And they're sort of puzzled, and I don't know what they're thinking. And then another one appears at the side of it. But now he's thinking, my God, I hope it takes a picture before whatever it is disappears. And he gets the picture quite by chance. So we've got a Nikon camera. I've got all the frame rates and everything on it. But it proves quite a lot, Chris. It proves that they're not flares, they're not afterburners, they're not meteorites. We don't know what they are, but you see, there's no movement in the picture. And these lights are stationary. There's no motion blur, they're not going anywhere. So 1, 2, 3, over a period of, we'll say 15 seconds, he's got these lights. And whatever it does, snaps the picture. it don't tell us what they are, but it rules out a lot of the staple explanations that have been fired at me for quite a lot of years. And I've probably detracted you again, Chris. Yeah, go on.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Thinking as well, going back to the lights there. I know you were saying, looking at, you've got multiple videos on your website, on YouTube, which are really great to watch. Loads of them, you know what I mean? And pictures as well and stuff. But on that, I know you were saying before that some can be seen with the naked eye, and some can't be seen with the naked eye, but they pick them up with some technology, maybe on a camera or maybe on like some of the night vision cameras and stuff as well.
A good example would be last year, and there were myself, Amanda Eames, and Steve Ashbridge. Now, I had my Sony NX80. It's not brilliant, but it's a couple of £1,000 worth of equipment. I had a Pulsar thermal camera. Steve had, I think he had a Yukon low light camera, and Amanda had a Psionics. Looks up into the sky facing inland, and there's 2 lights in the sky which the Psionics can see, and there's 3 people there. There's 6 eyes looking at this, and we can't see it. There's a bit of clouds, and these lights are clearly moving. I think it took them 6 minutes to move across the sky. If I had the Pulsar up, so if they've got an heat signature, I'm going to get them, because that's another quite expensive bit of kit. Nothing, can't see them. Can't see them through the Sony NX80, not even with night shot, but the Psionics picks them up for 6 minutes. That's a lot of the problem. You know, what you've seen on YouTube are little snippets of what has been a lot better footage. Once again, it's money. You've got to get something that's sort of capable of being a good all-rounder, and that's why I got the NX80, because it'd be great to interview someone. For example, do you know, if we're doing interviewing for Wolflands for the documentary, and it's got low light capability, but it's by no means brilliant. So, you know, you're really struggling. You want a bit of moonlight when you're using Sony, but I've since bought one of these Psionics, and it's a brilliant bit of kit. You know, I took it into forest swimming last weekend, as well as the Pulsar thermal, and it were half price at Pulsar, but I think it's I shouldn't say better, but because they've all got the uses, but it's equally as good. You know, it's
the one that it changes it into kind of. It's not just like a night vision. It turns into kind of daylight. You get colour with it as well.
You've got daylight, twilight, and night shot on this thing. It's only a little camera. I don't even know what it is, but it's only a little camera. You know, probably 3 or 4 inch long, but the actual technology that they've managed to pack into it's really useful. I mean, probably doing them a favour here, because I'm not selling it. I've had to buy it, by the way. If you want to give me one for giving you a plug, people, you can. But no, it's a good camera, and it felt. I spoke to Chris Turner about this. I don't know if you know Chris. He's done documentaries, Elusive and Bringing Down the Light with me.
Yeah, I know Chris.
I didn't do Elusive, but I did Bringing Down the Light with him. And he goes, before he got one, he says, yeah, but it only films in 1080p. Sorry, in 720p. I said, the Sony that I've got films in 4K, but it can't see in dark. This thing films in 720 and it can, for all intents and purposes, I suppose, unless you're going to spend 8 or 9 grand, this thing can see in dark for £1,000. Do you know what I mean? So it's well worth it. He's since bought one, and he just thinks, like, same as me, it's an incredible bit of kit. Yeah. You know, but I mean, not everybody wants cameras, Chris. Not everybody's. I'm trying to capture it because I sort of go on about these things, and I think you're trying to validate what you're talking about. You know, prime example. We're going up there in 2019 with a guy called Lee Hayward. Lee went up not to criticise, but to dispel. He didn't believe what I was saying. Yeah, but he did it in a good way. I mean, he's a great guy, Lee, but he wanted to go up, see it for his own eyes, and he was going to explain to me what I was looking at. So he checked flight radar, he checked whatever it was that were out on the sea, the surface of the water. He knew all names of boats that were out there, because when you look, you can see all these lights, and he'll go, oh, that's whatever it is, and that's that. And as we're driving along the lane, orange sphere lights up. And his exact words weren't, well, what do they look like? But we'd been talking. I said, look, there. What's that? I says, that's it. So we're looking, and then it just switched off. Gets down to the cliff tops. They did it several times. Lee, I can help you, actually. I've got this bit of paper, but that weren't for this, but I've got it. So it was November the 14th, 6:08, one light, 3 seconds. Lee wrote this down, 6:45, 12 miles out, he estimated it, 2 lights. 6:56, same position, 2 more lights. And then what happened was at 7:58, and there's a field at back of us with a bit of an hill, all farmland at back, and I've got camera facing out to sea on a tripod. At 7:58, I only know that because I'm looking at that bit of paper. I want to remember that. I sort of turned to speak to him, and they're in the field. They're not in the sky. They're in the field. I don't mean they're just. I don't know how high they would have been.
How kind of distance was that?
Oh, 300 or 400 yards away. They're not on the horizon. They're in the field where we are, and there's 1 ball on top, and there's 2 below. It's picture of sort of pool balls or snooker balls, you know. And so you got these, and there's like a halo around them. And I'm throwing the camera around, trying to get it fired up, because you ain't got the battery power to just leave them running all night.
Yeah.
And it's just imploding. It were huge. It were brilliant. That's still the best thing I've ever seen up there. And you think to yourself, and he's put 400 yards of props, so I've just seen that there. And you think to yourself, am I being too stupid imagining that were for Lee? Because I've not seen anything like that as close up there since.
Yeah.
But I've taken other people up. I took the rock angler up there who's fished those cliff tops, as he said, for 50 years. And he wanted to tell us about this spaceship, he said, landed on an hill, incredibly very close to where we saw this. Within 100 yards of where we saw this, but he'd never seen the lights. But when he allowed me to film him, Mick Sigson, they call this guy, and he told me about what had happened in 1998 in November during a fishing match. Put the camera away, 2 lights appear above us. There were Mick, myself, and Bob Brown. And I said, look, that's the one I'm on about. And he went, oh my God, what are they? I said, that's it. They're not little dots. Excuse me.
Right.
They're not like you'd see if you looked at a satellite or the space station. They're not like that. These things are probably, in comparison to the space station, apart from the ones I saw with Lee, which were really big, they'll be 2 to 3 times brighter and bigger than the space station when you see it. They're not in the heavens. So, so if we go up there, somebody wants to, that's not a problem. If I try to go, if somebody says, oh, we're on holiday and we're off to Bridlington and we're going to Bempton, would you meet us? I'll go up there, if I can, if I have time. And sometimes you've gone up there and they go, well, it'll be rubbish, won't it? Because it's cloudy. These things will show below cloud. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not some dot that you can see moving in heavens and somebody's going to go, oh, it's a satellite, you fool.
Do you see when it was that close? I know it was like obviously a light. Did you see a dimension to it? As in, did you see? Was it like an orb, or was it? It
were 3 distinct balls.
Yeah,
three distinct balls with what looked like an aura all the way around them. They were contained within an aura, a circle.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know whether that were just the light that was emitting. Do you know what I mean? Because you could actually see a faint glow on field as well. Because I've often said that when we see these things out at sea, when people have said, oh, the flares. So, well, they're not lighting anything up. And in a lot of instances, not every instance, a lot of instances, the whole point of a flare is to light up an area. And we know that some are distress flares to alert people that, we've got a problem here kind of thing. But they're not lighting anything up. They're not floating down on wind, and you're not seeing a trail of smoke, or you're just seeing it comes on, goes off, Go on.
So sometimes when you say that, I know you've mentioned before where you could go to get the camera out and they turn off, and you put the camera away, they turn on and things like that. Or as you said, when Lee Hayworth was up and they appeared, I know you've talked about the intermind connection. You think there's something there about that where
I do. I mean, I don't know about what people are doing with this. Do they call it CE5 and things like that? The Stephen Greer form of trying to communicate or evoke these things. I don't know anything about that. I've not really tried it. Andrew Collins has been up on cliff tops a few times with me. I don't know if you know Andrew.
No.
And he's written a couple of books, well, more than a couple, and he works for History Channel,
Mhm.
and he's
Oh yeah, I don't know who. I know who he is. I don't
yeah,
know.
he's done. Well, the reason I'm mentioning Andrew is that he's done meditation up there, and I assume trying to evoke these things. I wouldn't knock it. I put it this road: if I were up there and he got a result, I'd be doing it every time I went up. You know, it's we've tried all sorts. I mean, Bob, who I've just mentioned, Bob Brown, who comes up quite often with me, he bought a EMF meter.
Yeah,
and we'll put it on when we go up there, and I don't know why it does it. There's nothing. There's no electrical cables. There's nothing up there. But you can just put it on and leave it on a post, well away from everybody. Get your phones out of the way, and suddenly that thing will just go daft. It'll just for 30 seconds. There's a massive pulse of energy on, and it just stops. But it might not happen again all night, or you'll just be walking with it, and suddenly it's doing it again. I took a guy up there called Peter Masters, who's an electronics engineer, and really clever man, Peter. I think he used to work with Faraday cages and plasma and things, and he's built some gear up there. So we took his laptop up, and we took this receiver that he made with this, I don't know, this antenna on it. And we were walking about. We made sure there weren't people up there that had probably thought we were nuts, but we were walking about with this thing. There's nothing. There's no electrical sort of outputs up there, but all of a sudden we've got this massive band of energy just going up the screen of the laptop, which he can't, for the life of him, fathom where it's coming from. And it were omnidirectional, so meaning, wherever he pointed this thing, this band of energy were there. When we moved out of the way, moved backwards a few paces, it disappeared. Moved forwards, it disappeared. And then you come again and it's not there. So it's hard to say what's happening. I don't know how, a couple of months since, a guy from California came up, Alec, they call him, nice guy. I met him up there. He stayed, I'd like to say 5 days. I'm not certain how many days he stayed. I think it was on the cliff tops up at Flamborough. And basically, I mean, that's what it's all about, people like him, to be honest with you, because he'd been to Skinwalker and, looking for some kind of experience, searching for the unexplained phenomena. He ended up almost getting arrested, he told me, because he got a bit too close. But then he ended up in some kind of homestead close, and the police came there, spoke to him. But when he told him what he was doing, some of the locals, I think, well, I won't say took to him, but they advised him where to go and what to look for, but he didn't experience anything. From there, he went to Romania, to the Hoia forest, which is supposed to be one of the most haunted forests in the world. And what a brave lad, to be honest with you, really brave, because apparently there's bears and wolves in there, and he went in alone. I go in these forests, and I think I'm brave. And I mean, apart from getting cold or wet, unless one of these cryptids should manifest, I'm pretty safe. But this guy went in there, but experienced nothing. But guess what? Bempton is up there, his last day, walking back on his own. And I'd got an email waiting for me, and then he talked to me and told me about what happened. And it's nothing spectacular, but he's midway between Bempton and Flamborough, and suddenly there's a very, very high-pitched ringing in his right ear, and stops still. Can't work out what it is. He realizes it's not something within him, and steps backwards and it stops. Steps forwards and it starts. Steps forward again and it stops. The routine, steps back and it's there. So obviously we've no explanation for this, but I've heard this. Steve Ashbridge's partner, Kelly, has been up with us. She heard it one night, and I think I said, the way I put it to him, I said to Steve, and Kelly said, I don't know about you guys. I said, but can you hear that? And Kelly said, she said, I thought it was just me. She said, I can't stand it. And she'd got like an headband on, and she'd put it over her ears. And she said, if it carries on, we're going to have to leave. I've got to go. And we knew when it had stopped. Steve couldn't hear it. It was weird, and I'm not on my own, and these people aren't sort of the only ones. There's lots of people. Once again, we're coming back to strange sounds. And so it's not just the visual that can be of a paranormal nature. I mean, there may be some perfectly good example for these sounds. It could be something to do with man-made electronics that's been projected for some reason. And I don't necessarily mean at us. It's just that we might be in wrong place at right time, you know. So it's hard to say.
I think the technology and stuff, we were talking about the inter-mind connection and things like that. I don't think it's too crazy to think things down the line, future-wise, that you couldn't download something off somebody or whatever else. I know this sounds totally crazy, but we're all electrical beings, right? You can even buy now, when people go hunting and stuff like that, right? You can even buy now clothing which is made and lined with certain material that it stops your electric field emanating from your body. So animals can't sense the intent. And it's supposed to be really, really good material and stuff like that. I know a wee bit about it because I have a condition with electrosensitivity with mobile phones and stuff like that. So I know kind of what it's like, but I can't see it being well out there, that, because you know, like talking about you've got a mobile phone in a sense, even thinking about having a mobile phone, going back in the days when they had them in Star Trek and whatever, and you thought, and that's just crazy thinking you have that. But now you can basically download everything off of somebody's phone. You can hack somebody's phone. Who's to say you couldn't hack somebody?
You know, you're so right. It's just the reason I thought of this term, the intermind connection, were in first book. And once again, it's a rock angler, and he's gone up onto the cliff tops, November time, cold winter's evening, gone up past the RAF base, set up his fishing gear, and as I've told people before, we use this bit of paper. These cliffs are like that; they're vertical, you know. And don't think paper did out really, guys, did it? You couldn't see it. They're like that. That's it.
Line.
Yeah. So they're vertical. So they're fishing off top of these cliffs, and he's observing night and stars, because they've nothing else to do, have they, unless they're going to catch a fish. And they're in dark. I think they have a little glow tip at end of the rod or whatever. They can see if it's moving. And he perceives this unusually large star that looked like it were in the heavens. And he's trying to work out what it is, because he doesn't recall seeing this particular star before. He says, but instantly, it's on him. It's on him. It's above him, so we know it can't have been in heavens. And it's literally within the time it's took him to think, what is that? It's above him. And he says, I'm just surrounded by a light that's so bright, it's like a welder's arc. He said, and the grass looks like blades of silver. He said, everything. He says, and then within a second, it's gone. And the star's gone. And is that the intermind connection? You know, I mean, is it the intermind connection when you take somebody new up there, like Lee, who went up thinking, I can solve this. I think he's looking at afterburners, or I think he's definitely mistaking this for a planet. Even you don't know what people are thinking. And are we in an area where we've got this sort of absolute richness of paranormal activity that it can actually manifest? And it's all about intent as well, in my opinion, because if you've got a time of bereavement, should we say, your mind's in a different kind of setup, in it. It's you're thinking different. You're in a different emotional state, and you often get people saying, "I saw my granddad," or "I saw this relative who's passed away," and are we just imagining it, or is it the emotional state that's putting us into this other place that can access these things, or these things can come through? Because you definitely get people talking about things like that during the times of great distress and upheaval. So is it any different when you go to these places and you're sort of really expectant, you really want to see it, and your mind's focused on it? And no different to the gear stuff, the CE5, when they're focusing. I don't know. I suppose everybody has their own way of looking at these things. All I know is that there does seem to be a pattern when I take somebody up there. I don't mean every time, but occasionally when they've never been up before and something happens. It's happened on a lot more occasions than when I've gone on my own, or with Bob Brown or Steve Ashbridge or Andy Ramsden, when we've seen absolutely zilch. It's just how it is.
So when did you, what came first? Was it more about or was it at the same time with obviously the sightings coming through, with the actual lights that were getting seen, and obviously nuts and bolts craft that were seen as well within the area? And then going on for that as well, it's another kind of bit of adding on to the question, what was the military involvement in potentially chasing these craft in the sky and stuff as well?
Well, the military involvement, I suppose it's hard to say what their role is, but I know often when we've seen these lights over the sea, within 15, 20 minutes, there's jets over the sea. It's not happening other way around. They're not chasing, flares that they've fired. That's how it tends to work. I mean, and as for the structured type stuff on the walls, I mean, we saw this tube at Sledmere. It looked solid, or even though it were a light, it was the shape of a breadstick. It looked a solid object that was just emitting a feeling more than a sound. It was, you could kind of feel it hitting you.
Yeah.
But that were in 2002, and in 2014, just over the hill, there's a place called Cottam, another little village called Cottam, and a farmer there and his son and his wife, they were driving up. They were shutting gates on their farm. The sun was shutting gates, and the ground goes down at, we'll say, 30-degree angle, and they'd had a mast up to measure wind speed. I don't know what for. I would assume to see whether it were viable for wind turbines, but there's a mast up, a thin mast. They said they can't see their farmhouse because it's down in this dip, but in front of the mast, and they don't know whether it were landed, but well below the angle of the ground, this huge tube just starts rising. They said it looked like a jumbo jet on its side without wings, and it's coming towards them. All three are looking at it. All three have done my rough sketches, which I put in first book. I think it was wife that saw windows in it, and son. Husband, he just said it was just a massive white tube. They're panicking because it's moving towards them. Now, what happened at Sledmere, which will make sense with this one, me and Shorty are looking at this thing, and we didn't take our eyes off it, but we both sort of looked at each other and gone, where's it gone? It just vanished. It didn't fly away, it just disappeared. It didn't dissipate, it was just there, and then it weren't. And what does this guy say? And his wife said, we were looking at it, we're panicking because it's lifted up, it's in front of the mast, and it's coming towards us, and then it just vanishes. That's 12 years later, just a few miles away. So have we got a locational thing again? But they saw, well, two of them saw windows in that. And just a bit further away at a place close to a burial mound called Willie Howe, which has got all sorts of stories from folklore attached to it, elves and goblins, and in 12th century, William of Newbury documented this sort of hole inside of the mound and all beings inside it. It's an incredible place, and this is where a pilot of a light aircraft encountered the light forms, or a sphere of light, and his plane, he perceived, stopped in midair because it was daylight when he was flying and it was night when he came to. But I don't know if we've time to talk about that, but we've lost track here. But sort of when we get towards Willie Howe and Burton Fleming and all these places, which are all close, they've all got, I've collected stories from locals, all with stories attributed to not just lights, but structured craft. There's an ex-police officer in Burton Fleming just a few miles away who told me about seeing something that looked like a crucifix with all different lights on it, quite low, just going over the top of his home. It's an incredible area.
Totally, it sounds that. I mean, well, I've been interested for a while in your work, and it's great. I mean, what's down there?
Just before you carry on, Chris, what I have to say is there's 3 books, there's 4, but there's 3 with UFO reports, East and North Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And anybody coming to the area, bear in mind that I've spoke to, I wouldn't say 99%, 100% of these people. If I've changed the names, it's because they've asked me to, but I can still find elements to verify exactly what they've said. But what I'm stressing is, because I've had people come up and gone, I've been at Bempton, we've been up there for a week, we didn't see anything. These books go over like 70 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, Chris? We've got one guy in Bempton who's walked Cliff Lane for 29 years, morning and night, depending on his shift. 2 stories for book for me in 29 years. So please don't think that when you go up there, bang, it's going to happen, because it might not. And I stopped you, didn't I, Chris? So far away.
No, I'm just, it's interesting as well because of you've got the area there. You've got Saxton Wold, which is one of the oldest radar stations in the country, if not the oldest.
It is the oldest operational radar base in the world.
These things are seen above, in the world it is it? Yeah. And these things are seen round about the base as well. And
that's correct.
Do you think there's any other connection between that, or do you think they're actually... Is
it the energy output? I don't know. Is it that's attracting these things? I've seen spheres of light. I mean, we've spent a lot of time up and around that base. There's a farm close to that base. They're not interested. Once again, I wrote about this in first book. They're not interested in the lights. They claim to see beings. They claim to see beings, fragmented, break up bits of beings when they're driving the tractors.
Yeah,
I know this because I have a very good friend who's a plumber who's worked on the farms, and I've since got more information that he didn't know what they were on about at first. He's working there, and somebody come in. Well, they're all having the lunch. He said, "I've just seen one." And they're driving the tractor, and you know when a deer's ran past or in front of you, or a hare, and they're seeing legs and nothing else, and fragment or around the farm. So they spoke to them about me, and they're not interested in lights. They know, everybody seems to know about the lights. Mm-hmm. There's a guy up there. I'm not going to say what he is or where he is, but he's literally back at base, and there's not many properties at back at base. And he's got cameras, or he did have, on cams in every room, huge hard drives, filming 24 hours a day, not for anybody else's benefit, but for his own. He's the guy that got me onto the Wolds, really. I mean, we know I talked about Shorty and myself sighting. This is the guy that got me up there on a night, on a regular basis for years. And I would be talking to this guy on the phone, and he'd be saying, "Can you see it?" And I'd be saying, "Yeah, we can. We're looking at it now." And he's filming it from 11 miles away at Staxton. You know, Staxton's, as the crow flies, Staxton Wolds are probably only 11 miles from where I'm sat now, to be 6 miles from where we were on the Wolds. And this guy, I mean, God knows what he's got now, because he had a massive, massive collection of UFO-related material. I mean, back when I did that little bit of a documentary with Richard D. Hall, I don't know if you'd seen it, about the Wolds UFOs.
Yeah.
It was him that had contacted Richard.
No, right.
And then he decided he didn't want to do it, because he's not a bad guy, but just shy. He just didn't want to do it. I was actually in Danes Dyke with my dog and my wife having a walk. Mm-hmm. Me and Mary were just took dog for a walk, and I got a call, and I literally drove straight through from Danes Dyke and did that with Richard, sort of on the hoof, if you know what I mean. I just so none of that were planned. But he's the guy that were instrumental in getting me looking at these things on the Wolds, and I bet he's still doing it. I haven't spoke to him for a few years, to be honest with you, but he will be.
The reason I asked about the Staxton Wold is because there's other stories elsewhere where about frequencies drawing these things in to a certain degree in other places in the world. But on that note, that's kind of one of the things I did originally think of. But then when you look at some of the other material you put out as well, it's a case of these go back years, well before leaving the radar station was there. And all the strangeness, it goes back years and years and years.
It goes back years and years, and it's the same with the cryptid sightings. Mm-hmm. Like I've said lots of times, I didn't really think I'd ever get involved in them, but you know, we're looking in archives. Mm-hmm. The stories going back well over 100 years about things that in them days they didn't call them dogmen or werewolf even. It were a barghest, and it's a sort of fur-covered bipedal or on all fours if it wants to animal the size of a bear with and they always said it had flaming red or yellow eyes or orange eyes. How strange that when we're doing Wolflands in 2018 we've got 3 guys wild camping in forest, and this thing stood up and it's got self-illuminating eyes. And there's other stories within them forests where farmers and other people have gone into forests and seen something with self-illuminating eyes. I mean, it's almost like bioluminescence, but actually within the air, not underwater kind of thing. Yeah. So, but the stories of folklore, Chris, just seem to be coming through. They've never gone. We're just reporting the same stuff.
Yeah, that's it. And that's one thing I always kind of think as well, when you've got the folklore, obviously they've got a culture at that time when they're living at that time, or they've got maybe other religious beliefs or other beliefs systems, and then they'll see it as something else or see it the same thing. And then it comes into this time, and the same with the lights or the UFOs and whatever else. And then it was theories, pixies,
yeah,
whatever else. And then now it's kind of jack-o'-lantern, will-o'-the-wisp, and then now it kind of progresses into what we've got now and stuff. But I was interested in like the cryptid sightings you've got. When did you have your kind of first cryptid sighting coming to you, and then making the kind of the difference between being interested, obviously, and investigating the light phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon, and then finding out about all this in the area as well, just a mixture, melting pot, all this different phenomena?
The first ones came from Flixton. I think it was a guy walking on A1039 road with two dogs, and went up towards Flixton and Staxton Wold and saw something in the top of on the field line. There's a 3-bar wooden fence, and it's quite steep. I think it goes up 500 foot, and you've got Staxton Wold at the top, the radar base. And he thought it was a pony. He couldn't work out what it was, and his dogs was quite small, and the grass was long. But the dogs, once again, the dogs kind of knew there was something unusual, and he said it ran down the field, and then did like a semicircle and went back up into the wood on two legs. And I don't mean I listened to it and thought, oh, what a load of rubbish. But then I got a report from at the back of Staxton and Flixton. You've got SEMA. And there's a tip there, and a report from somebody who worked on the SEMA tip, who said he'd seen this fur-covered man. And I'm thinking, well, seems an unlikely place to see such a thing. But then I've had another one about it on the SEMA tip. Then there's a water treatment plant on the Flixton, on the Caton and Staxton cars, Fulton cars, and I think we've said what the cars are. It's CARRS, and that's the area of wetland. Water treatment plant worker claims he's seen it. Then you go back to 1930s, and there's an old farmer who's passed away now, and I think his name was Johnny Keith, because I've spoke to the guy who worked for him, who's an old guy. And Johnny Keith always claimed that he'd seen a werewolf several times on the cars. Interestingly, I talked about the Flixton werewolf on Coast to Coast, I don't know, probably last year or early this year. And somebody contacted me today. It'd be brilliant if I could get in touch with whoever it is. They've put that show, is it on Reddit? Is that what do we call it on internet? Reddit. Yeah,
Reddit, yeah.
And in the comments, because I've looked at it today and I thought, how do I contact this person? So if anybody can contact them for me, please do. Somebody's talking about, oh, this is Paul Sinclair is talking about the cryptid sightings, UFOs, and somebody's written a comment saying, thank God somebody's validated my husband. He used to live in Flixton, and he's seen this thing, and he knows of people who've seen it. And I thought, wow, that I need to speak to this person, but I don't know what I've got to do to contact him. It was a year ago the comment were on. Somebody highlighted it to me today. Interesting, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
That's just another element, and somebody that I've not got to. At the other side of the Flixton and Fulton cars, you've got Caton, and you've got a guy there, Lee, and his wife. And Lee had got a story to tell me before they built the new houses on what's called West Garth. It would have still been part of this area of wetland and reeds and elder. And he said he's driving along there one night. I don't know what year. We're not going back that far, to be honest. We're only going back probably to 2011. He said, I've just looked at some bungalows to the right of him. He says, and I just peripheral, I caught something coming down the side of a bungalow. He said, and in one leap, it leapt in road, and then it were off of it onto cars. And he said, it just looked all wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, everything. Its legs looked back to front. He said, I just can't explain it. He says, it were wrong. And I said, well, what did it resemble? And he said, well, it didn't resemble a werewolf. He said, it thought, as what people perceive a werewolf to look like. He says it were bony, very lean and sinewy. He says it had fur, but it were very, very thin and silvery coloured. But in one leap, it leapt, if we're to believe him, leapt into the road and went off over into the cars. 2 women driving between Flixton and Muston, which we're all local, we're all close, we're all within a few miles here.
Yeah.
Late at night, they're just driving off the A1039 road, because that road always features, because it's on a road that's running through the place. Coming down the hillside, it must have come down hillside, which is called Whitegate Hill. Interesting, because there's burial mounds in there. You've got Elf Howe and things like that within there. This thing, she said, just jumped straight in road. I spoke to both sisters, and it jumped into the road. I said, what did it look like? They said, it looked like Remus Lupin from Harry Potter film.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, how did they find out about me? Because there's a pub in Flixton, and they must have a message board, a Facebook page, and somebody had put some stuff about Flixton werewolf on it. And somebody had commented to this girl, her name was Kelly, my God, isn't this what you said you saw? Yes, and somebody pointed the comment out to me, and I contacted her, and I got the story, because otherwise it wouldn't have come to me. Guy walking the cliff tops at walking the beach between Reeton and Speeton. It rhymes a bit, that, doesn't it? And his dog stands still looking at something. Full moon, November 12th, 2019. And this is the pointer dog. And he says he's a really clever dog. He says he stands different when he sees a rabbit or a pheasant. I don't know what he's seen. Get my binoculars out, little binoculars. He says, and I'm thinking, what is it? Is it a big goat? Is it a donkey? Then it stands on 2 legs. And it's up and it's off on 2 legs over along the cliff tops. And, you know, are they all lying? Am I lying? Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing, though, that's when you come to look at all this, and even for what you're finding yourself, and if you look elsewhere, I know you don't follow a lot of other people, because you've got a lot of information to get through and wade through yourself. It comes in your own area. But when you look outside that as well, there must be thousands and thousands of really good actors out there with all these witness accounts.
There's got to be. Yeah, there's got to be.
And then when you go back to, sorry to interrupt, when you go back to as well, when you look at the historical accounts, and even you find with yourself, you look at the place names with the Houndby thing as well. Where you've
got Hummonby. I mean, there'll be people saying it's all because the king kept his hounds there, but there's no historical reference that ever happened. So they don't know. But so it's called Hundmanby, meaning farmstead of the Houndman. Then you've got Hundale Point, where strange things happen. Hounddale Point, that's out at sea, you know, on the edge of the sea. Then just up from Hundale Point, you've got Beast Cliff, where rock anglers claim to have seen something on 2 legs, told me personally, more than one, walking towards them. Put a torch on it, seen eyes, it's dropped its head down. Put a torch on it again, it's still coming. To a point where they've cut the lines, gathered the gear and ran. Then you go up to Kettleness. Further, Ravenscar's got reports of the black dog. Whitby has. I mean, it's the black. I think it would call the black shuck. I could be wrong. Or then the padfoot, the dog with the glowing red or amber eyes seen around Whitby that inspired the Dracula the dog.
Yeah.
Do you see? So that didn't come before the Dracula films. That was there. Then if you go further up to Kettleness, you've got, which is just up from Whitby, you have lots of stories of the huge dogs with the glowing red eyes. Then if you go inland, and you're only going inland like 8 or 9 miles, you come to Goathland, and they've got the story of the Guy Trash, which is a huge dog with glowing red eyes, which inspired Hound of the Baskervilles. That didn't come first. Do you know what I mean? And it's incredible. And then if you come down from Goathland, just a few miles, you're in the area where the gamekeeper claims to have seen this fur-covered upright beast. You're in the area where the 3 lads from Rotherham claim to have seen it. You're in the area where the mountain bikers claim to have seen it, and a host of other people that we know about who haven't gone on film. But for Wolflands, for the most part, we've got a woman at Flixton who claims to have seen it, and we're going to film her, but she's only allowing us to film back of her head. She's had so much, I won't say grief, but ribbing off her husband and her family for saying she's seen this thing. And she was with her husband when she saw it. She couldn't believe what she's looking at as they're approaching the roundabout at Spittal Corner well after 11 o'clock at night, and they just go around towards Seamer, and she says to her husband, stop the car. And then she tells him what she's seen on the roundabout. They drive around. There's nothing there, but she's adamant that she saw it. But apart from this woman and a reconstruction that we've got to do for the paratrooper because he's not well. Everybody else is on camera. Everybody else, it's their face, do you know, and they're having these experiences. And in a lot of instances, Chris, you know, there's the other element that's attached to this, which kind of throws these cryptids into the realm of the true paranormal and not the actual bona fide flesh and blood creatures. It's this lower silence. It's this descent into the lower silence, this strange, almost submersed feeling that everybody gets where everything suddenly goes silent, and that's like there's been a pause button pressed on the world.
Yeah.
And everything dies out, everything fades out. If it were blowing a gale before, suddenly it's not. You know, do you know what I mean? And
yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's, I wouldn't say in every instance, but in a lot of times that's attached. I mean, the Rotherham guys, there were 3 went into forest, there's 2 gone on camera, but the one that hasn't gone on camera knew it were there before they saw it. Mm-hmm. He knew it were there. He told them for up to an hour before. They know it were definitely 30 minutes. They weren't timing it, see? And he's saying, we've got to go. We're being watched. Mm-hmm. They say, what are you on about? There's something watching us. We've got to go. And they're saying, don't be daft. We're here now. He said, it took us like an hour and a half to get into forest. Mm-hmm. And it was pitch black. We couldn't leave. It's in a ravine that's like 700 to 800 foot ravine. I don't mean you're climbing on ropes, but it's very steep.
Yeah.
So to get out of that in night is a difficult job. And I said, we didn't, you know, we just tried to keep him calm and just look, there's nothing. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly in the darkness, 45 foot away, how do I know? Because I took a surveyor's tape and I've measured where they were and where they perceived they saw it. 2 huge amber eyes light up, about 36 inch off ground. Says, and he's absolutely beside himself. We're having to hold him. He's a big guy and he's wanting to just run. Mm-hmm. This went on for ages. He's getting more and more agitated. Jim stands up half an hour later, tries to shoo it away. I had a clue what he's looking at because I said, give me an idea of the size of the eyes. And Jim's exact words were, I can't think of an animal to assign the eyes to. He said, because they were bigger than a cow's, wider apart than a cow's and a lot bigger. He said, but I shooed it away and it disappeared. So, and then I turned round, he said, and then when I looked at the guy who will not name and I looked at Steve, the jaws have dropped. He says, and I knew something were up and I turned round, he says, and from being 36 inch off ground, they're now 7 foot in air. He says, and you can see it in backlight at noon. He says, and I mean, and we've spent nights now in the forest with these guys. Mm-hmm. Maybe it shouldn't be a case of be careful what you wish for, Paul. You know what I mean? But we've done that. I mean, the first time, do I think these guys are genuine? Yeah, 100%. And the gamekeeper. Mm-hmm. And the first night that they met us, and they come from Rotherham, they come straight from work, 2.5 hour journey, straight to the forest. Walked in, myself, Les Brown, and Chris Wright, just to show us where they'd seen it, and then out again. Up that ravine. Seriously, Les Drake, Digital Creations, collapsed at the top of the ravine. We thought it were an ambulance job. He's out. He's gone. We took his rucksack off him. We took his camera, everything. It was too much for Les. You know what I mean? It were really hard going. Mm-hmm. And it just overheated. We got a bit of water in him and took his jacket off. And luckily, but what I'm trying to stress is these guys, 2.5 hours to get here, straight from work, 2.5 hours back, work next day, and then they've come in and spent nights in, and we're planning. They saw it in August, which is this month, mm-hmm. And I don't think it was the full moon, but there were a moon. So we're planning on going in. I think the full moon is the 22nd of this month, and that's a Sunday. We're going to go in on the Saturday. I know I'm going to go in with one of them, mm-hmm. and Chris Wright's going. So when we say we're going in, people, we're not thinking, oh, this is going to happen. But I'm probably being really silly putting myself in these positions, because if they're telling truth, and I believe they are, then they've seen something horrendous. Mm. If we're ever going to get proof, we're not going to get it sat here, me and Chris talking to each other. You know, you've got to be out there. If you know, so that's what we're doing. I mean, I'll not be setting trail cams up and motion sensors and any of that. We'll just go in, we'll sit and observe. I will take the psionics and the thermal, but I won't be flashing lights around forest all night and stuff. Mm-hmm. We were in there last weekend, just sat nice and quiet, lit a fire, and savoured atmosphere. There's nothing like it anyways. As night starts to fold in, if you're in a forest, and
Yes.
The life slowly sort of dies. It's an amazing experience, and you know, and as it comes to life in the morning as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. They look good.
Yeah.
But it's totally intriguing, the amount of phenomena that's down that area, and that's one thing I wanted to highlight. Just, I know you've got loads of, you could sit here for hours and hours and hours. I know you've got loads of other accounts and stuff, and like, I mean, for what's down there, I want to highlight for listeners who maybe haven't heard your material, or new listeners to it, for the fact that they've got people looking at elsewhere. Like, people look at like the programs on TV, like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff like that, but you've got it here. I mean, it's on your doorstep.
It's here, and I would think, Chris, that probably this area isn't unique. You know, I have the feeling that, you know, if you can, I like places in your own particular area, you will find them, maybe even more prolific with sightings and encounters, especially if you're in a remote area. I think what you've got with myself personally is I've still got the energy to get out there.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said to people, I packed in work at 48, and you know, and after working, like, I worked, sound like I'm boasting, but I worked stupidly hard with my hands. Do you know what I mean? We're all, but I were quick at what I did as a joiner.
Yeah.
So I got into a position where I didn't owe anybody a penny. I don't have a load of money. I'd drive around in it's not a new car. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not going to say, oh, I can buy a brand new car. I couldn't. So, but I've got enough money to do what I do.
Yeah.
Got a few old houses and converted them to flats. I know people don't need to know that, but it's good to paint a picture of how somebody's able to go from 48 to 58 doing this. But what I'm trying to get at is I've devoted a lot of time to it. Like today, I was up at 5 o'clock. I was doing stuff for Buck. I've been doing stuff for Wolflands. With me and Les have been doing a bit of editing at dinner time, and it kind of never stops. And you know, and obviously we're going to do a Skywatch on Friday. It's Thursday tomorrow. We've got live stream, I think, tomorrow. I don't know whether, because we didn't have a guest, so we got, you know, I don't know whether I'm just going to ramble on for an hour, you know. But I don't know.
People want to listen to that anyway.
Yeah, so you know, but it kind of never stops. So I've devoted all this time to it. I mean, I must have spent 3 years in the archive at Bridlington Library upstairs, and I've gone through it, every paper, every single newspaper from 1931 to 2011 when it stopped. And you know, and just writing all random things. There were some things I weren't picking up on earlier. It's like a learning process. I was looking for UFO reports. I weren't really looking for cat disappearances. Always looking for vanishing cats. Yeah. So it were only writing second book that I realised that I'd come across these UFO reports, and then I'd come across a spike in missing cats. So when you go back to 2006, and you realise there's a lot of UFO reports, and there's a spike in cats disappearing. I can't say A is responsible for B, but there's the link is there. It's plain to see, you know. And we're not talking like odd missing cat. We're talking Bridlington Free Press reporting that you know, this particular week 4 cats went missing. I'll not say area because I can't remember. I think it was Queensgate in 2006, and then following week, there's 7 cats gone missing. And when you add it all up over a month, there's about 30 cats gone. No answer for it. It could be just somebody that sounds sarcastic then, can I? So wanted to make a fur coat, you know. But no, I don't mean that. I don't advocate. I like cats, but what I'm meaning is. It could be some sadistic person, but it was strange that there were a lot of UFO reports around that time, and there were also an article on Short Lane called that came from Short Lane, Hunt for the Deer Butcherers, which interested me when I read it, because it said that we're looking for somebody who's butchering deer, and they're paring the meat off the bone in an unusual manner, but they're not taking the meat.
How long ago was this?
This was all during that period, and the same thing were happening at Woldgate, which is probably 2 miles away, up around there. Loads of UFO sightings. I don't mean in 2006, but as an area as a whole, Woldgate, the old Roman road and the crossroads, gets a lot of sightings. And I've spent time up there. Well, our youngest daughter used to go to karate, and it were quicker, it were easier to go and drop her off and go and wait up Woldgate rather than drive home 15 minutes drive back. It were only 5 minutes to Waldgate from where she were.
Living that life now, all that kind of stuff.
So, you know, one particular evening, before it got dark, and my wife sat up there with me, and we're looking out, you can see right over the sea, you can see Wilsthorpe, you can see Hull, Flamborough, and a thing like you can picture a torpedo sweet, you know, like that shape, bullet both ends, just gold, just appeared in sky. We both saw it, and then it moved, but we didn't see it move, and it's in a different place, and that was that. So we saw that night at Waldgate. I were up there in the dark. I think Mary were with me once again, and she'll have been sat in car because she didn't see it. And I just sort of turned round, and it sounds pathetic, but I met the analogies to what it resembled, and it looked like a string of sausages, gold sausages, in the sky, and they just slowly evaporated. You know, so I think I probably have seen more than my fair share of things, but I put myself out there to find them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on these cliff tops looking for this stuff. I'm in these forests when most people are sat watching Coronation Street. You know, or you know, people have said, well, when I were looking at the animal mutilations around Bempton primarily, there's people in Bempton, when Chris made the Bempton Phenomenon, saying, who is this guy? Never even heard of him, never seen him. He must be making it up. Does he even live here? When I were on them fields at 4 o'clock in the morning and coming off at 8 o'clock and going home, they were still in bed. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And one at Farmers, he'd read the comments on social media and he said, I'm going to say something. They haven't a clue. I said, don't say a word. I said, well, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? It's just how it is. Did you see that fly up past you then?
Was that the fly? No.
Yeah, it must have been a fly. Yeah, I just saw it. Yeah.
But it's so interesting in terms of like if it's in the area, have you managed to, for all the data you've been correlating, all the different reports and that, have you managed to correlate some, I'd say, I wouldn't say an understanding, but when you see linkages between timelines and stuff like that, have you managed to see and link that? And I know you touched on that a bit there with some of the reports, but things when you see UFO reports, is there anything else happening at the same time in terms of like cryptid sightings and things like that? Have you managed to correlate?
Yeah, well, you do find that. You do find that as it's unfolding, other things are happening. And some of it's purely noise related. High-pitched ringing noises, the rumblings under the ground. But when you get the light form phenomena at the same time, but you might not get it straight away, Chris. You might, I might personally see the lights over the sea. Chris Turner came up, Jerry Denning, Mark Farnell, a few of us after Awakening Conference, and we saw the lights. But that were all we saw. But then a few months later, somebody might come at you with a report saying, you know, we saw this. I can't say it were a big cat for sure, but or I saw a black cat as big as a Labrador on cliff tops. When did you see it? Oh, around November 2nd. And you're thinking, hold on a minute, we were up there early November. So, so, you know, it doesn't always, you don't get it all in one shot or all in one hit. You know, and I mean, when we were up there, Chris Turner, we were stood at one of these stands and we looked down onto the cliffs. I think Mark Farnell were with us on this particular occasion. All got cameras in his hands. He's a professional cameraman, Chris. And I'm looking down at rocks and there's a brilliant white sphere of light on the rocks below. And Chris just looked at me and says, are you looking at the same thing as me? And said, yeah. He didn't think to film it. He didn't think to film it. Mark Farnell didn't. It's weird. And I don't mean there's something subliminally telling us not to film it. You just kind of saw, you're processing what you're looking at, that it's over with before you've got a chance to actually do anything about it. Yeah, you know, Bob, last year, sorry.
So you're kind of awestruck as well. So it's
yeah, definitely
the last thing in your mind to try, because at the end of the day, you're kind of getting. I know we said before. Obviously, it's not a case of we don't need to believe in this. I mean, it's just a case of we know it, right? But it's just another point of validation that you've got for yourself, not for anybody else. And it's not. I think it's the last. I wouldn't say it's the last thing you'd probably think of, but it's not the first thing in your mind to actually start recording somebody, just to show everybody else you've seen it for yourself. And
yeah, it is. I mean, Steve Ashbridge is no wish to really record it. I mean, I probably would, but if I'm seeing something, I'm trying to get camera on it. Yeah. Steve's looking at it. He's probably getting a better visual than I'm getting because I'm trying to get camera fired up, and you know, in dark, it's not always as easy. Especially if you're doing something in a rush, and your cameras have to be kept out of damp conditions, and it's always damp, and there's loads of moisture in air up there in winter. Luckily, the pulsar and the psionics, they're really well waterproof. But you know, daylight again. Bob Brown's up there. He's got his Panasonic camera. Gemma were up with us, one of my daughters. She's not really interested, but she was staying with us for a few weeks, so she said she'd have a run up with us. And I'm filming, well, trying to get camera set up, looking out to sea. It's still light. Same hillside where this old angler claims that this spaceship landed. Same field below where me and Lee Haywood saw these things. And Bob's taking a picture of a kestrel. And then I see him go. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, and he took another picture. He said, "I've just took a picture of something that's just appeared on hill." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I don't know." He says, "I've just seen it." And he's got this picture. And he'll not mind sharing it with anybody if anybody wants to contact Bob Brown. And it's hard to say what it looks like. It looks like some people might say it looks like an haystack that's fell on its side. Some might say that it looks like it's all pareidolia, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's clear. Whatever it is, it's in the fields are there, the sky's there, and this blob, and it could be a head and shoulders like crouched.
Yeah.
Within seconds, me and Gemma went straight up there. There's only fields about. There was nothing there. Just a strange, quirky thing that he'd managed to get a picture of, but in the same area. Them two again. Got dark one evening when we were up there. I didn't see it. I give Gemma this powerful torch of mine because it bugs me a bit. Bob's always flashing torch around all over the place, and you know, I can't be doing with it. But I don't say, "Oh, he'd probably listen to this." And
night vision gone.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so Gemma must have put torch over to this field and said, "What's that, Bob?" And he said, "Oh, it's a square bit of post on a fence post. It's a panel on a fence post. Yeah, it looked about the size apparently what a runner would have on his shirt, say number 15 or something, you know.
All right, okay.
But it was just a white panel." And then Bob went, "Hold on a minute, there's nothing there." So they both put torch on it, and between them both, I didn't see this. It just dropped at the floor and disappeared. No idea. You know, your guess is as good as mine. Then, so some of this stuff does not fit into what we would conventionally think of as unexplained phenomena. People are looking for poltergeist activity, UFO as in structured craft. You know, I mean, the cryptid thing, that as well. But then you've got this weird stuff. You've got the squares of light. Don't quite fit, does it? Do you know what I mean?
Some people don't make the connection as well, because you even get some people in the paranormal field who will predominantly into UFO activity, and you get other people on the other side maybe looking at the ghost activity.
Yeah.
And you get people who maybe research or look into or investigate everything, and they'll automatically see that if there's maybe people who are liking to maybe see UFOs, they'll have things happen in their house, they'll have poltergeist activity and all this kind of stuff as well. It's a mixy melting pot of different paranormal activity.
That's correct. You know, I mean, and then you've got the people will not stigmatize the structured nuts and bolts UFO guys. They're doing a great job, but that's all they want to look at.
Yeah.
And you got the cryptid people. That's all they want to look at. I mean, if there's strange things happening, things of an unexplained nature happening that don't fit in with what you're wanting to look at, I still think you're missing a trick. Totally. Because you know there's a link to it, and even if they're not linked, they're linked by the location, they're linked by what's enabling them. There's an enabler, shall we say? Do you know? And
there's something letting it through.
Yeah. Once again, we've sort of, or I've rambled on for an hour and a half, and I've not given anybody an answer because I haven't got one. Or you know, all I can do is fire over these experiences, my own experiences, and what I've seen, and you try to talk about the witness. If you've got faith in the witness who's telling you something, because they're not always telling you the truth. I mean, get loads of reports and some I'll just be polite but just not follow up. But if you've got faith in them, then my job, as I see it, is to put it over in the most plausible way possible. Like when I'm talking about the light forms and I'm talking about Brian Lancaster's photograph. I love the fact that when somebody says, "Oh, it's afterburners, it's a meteorite or they're flares." So no, hold on a minute. This photograph was taken over a 35-second exposure. There's no movement in them lights. They appeared 1, 2, 3 within 4 or 5 seconds and hung there for 15 seconds. And this guy has just managed to capture them. I've ruled out all your explanations, mate. I'm not saying there ain't an earthly explanation. I don't know. But at the moment, I'm sort of leaning towards the unearthly explanation. This is the true light form phenomena. And this guy's got it on film, or got a picture of it. I've got film of it, and film that I've not put out. And you also leave yourself wide open. Well, why don't you put it out? I will do. I'll pick my time, if you know what I mean. But I've got film of these lights, which are just coming on. And then there's another one and another one. The main problem was that the Sony camera that I bought, before I got the NX80, I had a Sony VX2100, which is a digital one.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant in low light, but the weather conditions up on cliff tops sort of ruined it, you know? And that were a couple of grand. And we got the NX80, similar thing. And I'm careful with this one. I don't leave it just stuck on cliff tops, getting wet through all night with moisture. So half at time, when these lights appear, I'm getting camera set up to film them, and they've gone. So I'm only getting tail end of them. But hopefully now I've got a little bit better camera equipment, stuff that I can actually leave up there ready to go should it present. And that's the idea. I mean, whether we get it or not, I don't know. But I've already got some on film of these things. I've literally held back with putting one particular piece out. And if I'd have got that thing what I saw with Lee Haywood, I mean, I think we'd have all been jumping about for joy, because that really was spectacular.
Yeah, but I think it's great that the amount of research you've done and the amount of stories you've collected. And I know a lot of people who research the subject say it's hard to be an expert in the subject because it's not tangible. That kind of sense. But you're an expert in the witness accounts and pulling together the data and adding it up, and that's one thing that you definitely are in. I mean, so
it's good to be able to gather the information, you know, and there's elements to these stories. If we jump right back to the beginning of when we first started speaking and talking about XS894, the lightning that crashed and the alleged UFO. I mean, because I have to say alleged because it caused a lot of distress to family and a full respect to family, because they didn't want anything to do with the UFO related story. But I found things that might be UFO related about it. I mean, I've never suffered any flack for it. I think Tony Dodd did, and other people. And I wouldn't just stick a pin in it and say, no, it's definitely UFO. But I'm still sitting on information. I'm sitting on a radar, not sitting on a radar operator, quite literally, people. I'm sat on a chair here. But a radar operator there on the night, still alive and kicking, who I've contacted, who I've spoke to. Once or twice on many occasions. All credentials are there. Everything's there to tell me that he was there on the night. He weren't at Bempton radar station, but he was one just further down coast, not a million miles away. Multiple unidentifieds over the sea that night. So, you know, so that's telling us something. But will I ever get him to come forward? I could say his name right now, but I've tons more respect for a guy than to do that. I wouldn't do that, and I'd never compromise him. So it's up to him if he's going to come forward and actually give me that information. I've got it. He's given it me. He's trusted me enough to give it me, but I'm not saying anything about it. I have a Coast Guard, a Coast Guard operative, very high up in Coast Guard, who's given me information, and you're sitting on it. But even though you can't talk about it, well, I know I am doing indirectly. It's kind of, it spurs me on. It validates me. It knows. It tells me I'm going in the right direction. Do you know what I mean?
You know, there is something tangible there.
Oh, God, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I know for a fact that during the Wilsthorpe incident, which happened in 2009, September 2009, although there were UFO sightings throughout 2009, but it sort of culminated in 2009. I know that the night that the old couple saw the object, a call went into police, which is now in protected archive. So am I ever going to get it?
This is the object out at sea. They see that out at sea.
They saw I don't know whether it was, they saw spheres of light. I say spheres, it could be sphere, because I can't remember now, coming from Flamborough or Flamborough Head Way, and spheres of light coming from Hull. and they entered what the witness said was a black yacht sail over the sea in the air. Triangle initially, you know, but that's how they described it. And I know that report is in protected archive. So anybody out there listening to this, if you think you can get it, go for it. You know, I don't know how you'd word it because, you know, but there's stuff out there. I mean, a woman contacted me called Carly, who I've spoke to at length, and I'm going to interview again. I only contacted her about 2 weeks ago, and she contacted me early this year or late last year to give me another account. This was from November. So September was when I got all my information, 2009, but in November 2009, she's driving down the road into Bridlington along the Wilsthorpe Road towards the roundabout. Her and her colleague, a young girl that she's got, I think, who worked for her or worked with her, following a red car. Suddenly the red car starts swerving and weaving about in the road. They thought he were drunk or he'd fell asleep. They didn't really know what to make of it, so they slowed down. The red car stopped. They overtook the red car. Maybe they should. I'm hoping the red car driver comes to me one day. I'm really hoping he does. Yeah. She looks to her right, and there's a hedgerow that's about 8 to 10 foot tall, and there's arable land at the back of it, and then there's Wilsthorpe at the other side and the sea.
Yeah.
She said there's a huge kind of bullet-shaped object skimming the ground with 2 red lights on it, absolutely massive. She said estimated that when they'd first seen it, this guy were 4 car lengths in front of him in his car, and it was bigger than the back of her car and bigger than the front of that one. She said it must have been, and he must have seen it then. She said it's going alongside of their car. She said the girl who's passenger with them screaming, actually freaking out, terrified. This thing's so tall that they can't see top of it.
Yeah.
No noise. So anybody that wants to turn around and say, well, it could have been a Hercules helicopter, it's at a blown car across the road. Do you know what I mean? So and it gets to the roundabout where the trees break, and there's a little roundabout and a light there. This thing stops, turns, shoots out to sea. That's just another account that we've got that's kind of adding flavour to Wilsthorpe. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The old couple, I think it was September the 15th, 2009, that they claimed that they'd seen these objects over the sea. Mm-hmm. And this is November. But, you know, I mean, before that, we'd got the bait diggers on the beach at Wilsthorpe who were telling me that they'd seen triangular shaped objects entering the sea. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense because it's that shallow, the sea out there, where they said these things were entering. Yeah. As the bait diggers said, if you put chest waders on, you could wade out 100 yards. Do you know what I mean? And they perceived that these things were entering. So where were they going? What if they're lying? Then why didn't they make the story a bit more credible and saying that they're about a quarter of a mile out? Yeah. So do you know what I mean? One particular nights that they went up there, they were taken off beach by military. Mm-hmm. You know what you're doing? Well, we're bait diggers. You know, what do you mean bait? He says we've come to dig bait. We've got to come on a low tide, and they got taken off beach. Then they came back and watched over the top. He says, and they've got metal detectors. They're assuming they were metal detectors. Nobody knows what they were, but they were military personnel scouring beach. All this around Wilsthorpe 2009. I realised that it's a bit fragmented, that, people, because we've not even broke into the story, but it might be one to do for another time, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. And just to touch on a bit as well, to let the listeners know as well, like the crash, the aircraft crash, there has been a number of other crashes in the same area. I'm right in saying that, and there's also a geomagnetic anomaly off the coast of
in a similar area. I don't know, 12 to 15 miles, 10 to 15 miles off Flamborough and Bempton. There's old maps that say a magnetic anomaly exists in this location, and then on other maps you've got the Bempton fault, mm-hmm. and you've got magnetic areas, and there's a lot of things seem to happen in these particular areas. And it is true to say that there are quite a number of aircraft that have gone down in that location. Money could have been just tragic accidents.
Yeah.
What is interesting, on June, I think it was June 15th, 1998, a tornado crashed off Ed, 25 miles off, I think, or somewhere around there. And we're going back to 1998. The UFO researchers of the day said this was UFO related. I weren't involved in any of that, but I think there were a thing called UFO updates at that time, and there were a lot of talk about it, and UFOs had been seen. But, you know, so somebody were doing their job, as I see it, that realised that the unidentified objects had been seen around that area and over the North Sea. And then this plane comes down, not necessarily to do with a UFO, but that's interesting. I mean, I found a lifeboat log. We said July 12th, same year, simply titled object, where fishermen had seen a large dark object descend from sky, land on surface at sea, lifeboats launched. So I freedom information request. Coast Guard wouldn't give it me. So I tried lifeboat agency themselves, and I got it. So I got the only thing that was redacted was the word object, but I've not got a problem because I saw it. I actually saw the log, so I have no problem. I don't have to think to myself, I'm going to add a little bit to that and call it object. That's what it said. So so we got that one. You know, so there were lots of activity. But what we were saying is June 15th, the tornado crashed. 2020, a Sea Eagle crashed June 15th. Do you know, I'm not saying, Chris, that it could be but a tragic coincidence, but it is quirky nevertheless. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah.
Chris, how long do you want to go?
Yeah, listen, I'm happy to, if you want to wrap it up there, that's fine. You know what I mean? We could talk at another date. I mean, I think I could listen to you all night, you know what I mean? But just to let the listeners know that we've only touched on some of the stories that Paul's got.
God, yeah. I mean, there's
now you've got 3 truth books out, and obviously the Night People, and you're writing another one now. Numerous videos, numerous YouTube.
Yeah, we will be working on Wolflands. So anybody that wants to just type in Paul Sinclair Wolflands, and you can look at trailer to documentary that we're doing. Is it all right to do this? Yeah. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. If you want to plug everything you can. I mean, I'll put stuff in the show notes as well.
Well, the thing is, Chris, I'm obviously you like to sell books, but I genuinely mean it. I'm not bothered whether I do or I don't. I've written them now, and if people want to buy them, then fine. Don't take my word for it. Read the reviews.
Great books, definitely, and I'd highly recommend them.
You know, you'll be reading books by somebody who's just knocked nails in wood for God knows how long, and then decided he's going to have a go at writing a book. But they've been received well. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And then I've written The Night People, which is about my own experiences. And then we're on with the next Truth Proof book, which I think will probably be done in a month. You know, I've been on with it quite a while now, and obviously that's going to be Truth Proof 4, subtitled Fantasy of Reality. And yeah, that's the website, which is truthproof.uk. So anybody listening, Chris, who's got any UFO reports, it does not necessarily have to be East and North Yorkshire related.
Yeah.
If you've got a good, credible report, we'd love to hear it. Send it to us. And if you want anonymity, just tell us, and we'll treat you with respect, and we'll put the report on. And it's, website. I've Don Lodge to thank for the website, not myself. He's a lot better at that than me. So he's putting all the reports on and sort of correlating stuff. So, I'm lucky in that respect that I get a lot of help off Don. All my poor spelling and punctuation, Don helps me sort out. Well, I've got to be honest. And Les Drake. I mean, I do a lot of filming for Wolflands now, only simply because I've learned quite a lot of Chris Turner and Les.
Yeah.
And, and we have our Truth Proof live stream, which is usually on a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. But other than that, Chris, I'm happy to talk again anytime you want, mate.
I would love to get you back on again, because I know there's a wealth of stories there. And going through, I followed all your material, and I got to the books last because in my job at the time, when I was working my day job, I travelled a lot. So yes. I listened to a lot of talking books and stuff. So I actually went back and started reading books again and read your books. I mean, that's what I started getting back in again. So, and I went for The Night People back the way.
Yeah,
I understand that. But I mean, The Night People as well, it's one of the best abduction scenario books I've read to this day.
What I did with Night People, I mean, and I don't know if I've done it right, but what I tried to do was paint a picture. Like, I'm 58, and there'll be obviously people all know just as well as me what it's like growing up in 1960s, but there'll be a lot of people who don't. And I wanted to try and paint a picture of what life was like in 1960s. So I didn't just want to write about my perceived experiences with these weird beings. Mm-hmm. I wanted to paint a picture of what it was like growing up in that time as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it worked. I mean,
No, it definitely did. It was a great book. I mean, I loved it. Have a look at Paul's work. You'll find them on Facebook, truthput.uk, and also, I mean, get his books, get them on YouTube, and I'll put everything in the show notes as well, so you'll be able to link them in.
yeah, and if
we'll get them
if
back.
anybody wants to get the books from me direct, just email me, and I can send details. And if you want them signing, I'm happy to do that. All good.
So I'd just like to thank you very much for coming back on. I appreciate all your stories and basically recounting the witness accounts and stuff like that as well. It's been great having you on, and we'll definitely, if you want to come back on, we'll get you on again. So thanks very much.
Love to, Chris. Been a pleasure. Thank you.